That seems to be the question on everybody's mind right now. There is a risk. I do think it is a moderate risk, however. If we look around the globe, I think the greatest risk of recession is in Europe, of course, where they're dealing so closely with the impacts of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I think Asia is a little more distant from that, but even more importantly, it's in a little bit different part of its business cycle than is, say, Europe and the U.S. Asia was slow to recover, really only began late last year and more strongly this year, particularly as economies began opening up after the wave of COVID finally began to ebb. So there's a fair amount of internal domestic demand still to be expressed in a lot of the economies of Asia. And that, along with opening up of travel and tourism around much of Asia, I think will do a lot to help the domestic side of the economies, even if impacts from external inflation or external demand may ebb a bit. So I do think that the risk is less here in Asia than it is elsewhere in the world right now.
How vulnerable, though, is China, given the extent of the COVID lockdowns? Trade data reflected that sharp fall in economic activity. The currency was down by 1%. Where does this leave the policy response?
Yes, it's remarkable how different the condition of the economy or where countries are in terms of the business cycle now when you look at North Asia versus the rest of Asia. Whereas if you think of it in terms of monetary policy, it's completely counter-cyclical, that Chinese policymakers are trying to provide stimulus to keep the economy expanding in China at a reasonable rate. It's tough, though. I mean, as Mr. Kashkari mentioned, all of the factors that are going against the economy, the global economy, and the Chinese economy in particular, given the COVID lockdowns and then also the regulatory environment for tech industries, very, very weak domestic demand. Frankly, it will take a lot of stimulus to get close to what China is looking at in terms of a target GDP growth. And frankly, I think the signals we're getting from policymakers in China is that they're going to be cautious in terms of providing the kind of stimulus that might be required to meet that 5.5% growth rate. So the risks are high in China. The government does have the capability of at least providing support to maintain a modicum of growth. And then the real question is whether the export side of the economy can really maintain its role as a driver of growth. China's already lost the property development market as one driver of growth, and really the other side is the export market.